Welcome to the Silent Heart channel, where we share stories that touch the soul and remind us of what truly matters. He was born into a world gilded in gold. Everything around him was polished to perfection, impossibly expensive, and utterly flawless. People didn't just call him rich, they called him a prince, not because of any royal bloodline, but because his father's empire seemed to own half the city. His life was a dizzying sequence of chauffeured limousines, sprawling mansions staffed with silent servants, and the constant watchful presence of private guards. From the outside, it was a fairy tale, a dream that millions wished for. But inside the gilded cage, it was a different story. He was suffocated by a profound loneliness, a silence that no amount of money could fill. The people who swarmed him, who laughed at his jokes and complimented his style, they didn't see him. They saw his lifestyle. They loved the power, the access, the reflection of his wealth that shimmered in their own eyes. They loved the prince, but they never once tried to know the man. But then, something happened that shattered his detachment. A stray dog, trembling and soaked from the cold rain, limped towards her. Without a moment's hesitation, the girl looked from her coins to the shivering animal. A look of soft compassion crossed her face. She broke her small treasure in half, giving a portion of her meager bread money to a nearby vendor, not for herself, but to buy a small piece of food for the stray. And in that instant, watching her small act of selfless kindness, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. A genuine, unforced smile spread across his face. It was a warmth that all his riches had never been able to buy. Curiosity piqued. He found himself drawn to this beacon of quiet humanity. The next day he saw her again, this time at a local community shelter. She was on her feet, tirelessly serving food to others, a bright smile on her face, even though it was evident she had barely eaten herself. She wasn't rich, she wasn't powerful, she certainly wasn't famous. Her name wouldn't appear in any society pages, but her heart. Her heart was vaster and more magnificent than any mansion he had ever grown up in. It was a palace of pure gold. He felt a pull he couldn't ignore. He wanted to be near that warmth, that light. So he started helping at the shelter, secretly. He shed his designer clothes for simple, practical ones. He left the limousine parked blocks away. To her, and to everyone else there, he wasn't a prince. He was just a simple, quiet volunteer, another young man wanting to lend a hand. He wanted her to see him, just him, without the blinding glare of his family's fortune, and she did. They talked while stocking shelves. They laughed while washing dishes. In her world, there was no pretense, no posturing. She showed him how to live without the constant fear of being judged for his wealth or status. She taught him the simple joy of a shared meal, the satisfaction of a day's hard work, the beauty in connecting with another human being on the most basic level. In turn, he listened to her dreams. He saw the spark in her eyes when she spoke of her hopes, hopes that were often constrained by the harsh realities of her life. He encouraged her, showing her how to dream beyond the limits that poverty had placed on her. He helped her see a future that was bigger and brighter than she had ever dared to imagine for herself. Slowly, quietly, and then all at once, he fell deeply in love. It wasn't a whirlwind romance of grand gestures and extravagant gifts. It was a love built on shared whispers, knowing glances, and the profound comfort of simply being seen and accepted for who you are. With her, he wasn't a prince or an heir. He was just a man, and he had never felt more like himself. But secrets, especially ones of this magnitude, have a way of coming to light. When his family discovered the truth about the girl who had captured his heart, she has nothing. His father's voice boomed through the marble hall of their mansion, a place that now felt colder and more alien than ever. She's a nobody. doesn't even belong in our world." He stood before his father, no longer the compliant son, but a man who had found his own worth. He looked him straight in the eye, his voice calm but unyielding. "You're wrong," he replied. "She has everything that our world has lost. She has honesty, kindness, and compassion. She has a soul." The ultimatum was swift and brutal. His family cut him off financially, severing all ties, fully expecting that the harsh reality of a life without their money would force him to crawl back, to abandon his foolish love and return to the fold. But they had underestimated him. They had underestimated the strength he had found. He didn't go back, chose her. Those next few months were the hardest of his life. He worked multiple jobs, from washing dishes to making deliveries, tasks he'd never imagined doing. They lived in a tiny apartment, a world away from the sprawling estate he once called home. Life was simple, frugal, and often exhausting. But for the very first time, as he counted his own hard-earned money to buy groceries, he felt truly, exhilaratingly free. He was finally the author of his own life. And one evening, as the sun set, they found themselves back at the same shelter where they first truly met. The air was filled with the familiar sounds of clattering plates and quiet chatter. He took her hands, his own calloused from work, and looked into the eyes of the woman who had remade his world. "I used to have all the money in the world," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "but I never had a moment of peace. I had everything a person could want, except the one thing I needed. Love, you gave me both. You showed me what it means to be rich in spirit." Because in her entire life, in a world that had so often overlooked her, nobody had ever chosen her. Not really, but he did.